What's up, true crime world? You're here with Luminol on the Wall, and I'm Bevy.
And I'm Becky. And today's case begs the question, how does Brenda Andrews, a loving stay-at-home mom, devout Christian and Sunday school teacher, become the only woman on death row in the state of Oklahoma? This is the case of Robert Andrews. Listener's discretion is advised.
So, Becky, I just wanted to begin by making a bold statement.
Ooh, I love a bold statement.
I think that egg salad sandwiches are undervalued. In fact, they are...
Boomtastic.
Yes, Becky. They are boomtastic, and anyone who disagrees with me, I will fucking fight you.
She will. She will fight you about egg salad sandwiches.
I did just have one, and it was fucking fantastic.
It was so...
I'm sorry, it was boomtastic.
That's right. Boom.
So this message serves as a reminder to anyone who has not eaten an egg salad sandwich recently, go do it.
Go eat one.
They're boomtastic.
All right, let's get into our story. Brenda was born on December 16th, 1963 in Enid, Oklahoma. She was raised in a very devoted Lutheran household. Church was life for them. Now, growing up, Brenda was a straight-A student. She also took up very homely activities such as sewing and cooking. Brenda's mom noticed she wasn't quite like the other girls, mostly meaning she wasn't boy crazy. And because of this and her odd hobbies, the other girls found little commonalities with her, leaving Brenda with a small social circle. But just because she had a small social circle didn't mean she didn't have any friends. She just had a few really good ones. Now, it's said that Brenda would do anything for the people she loved. Now, when she got into middle school, she wanted to join a baton twirling group. This consisted of 10 other girls. Brenda's mom thought that this was actually a very good idea because it would allow Brenda to experience a different social setting than she had ever experienced before. But at the same time, it would keep her out of trouble. And for the most part, it did. But as Brenda got a little older, she started becoming more confident and she realized she was a really beautiful girl. And she became a bit more flirty. And as a result, she caught the eyes of many suitors. One being Robert Andrews. He was born and raised in Enid, Oklahoma. He was a devout Christian himself. He was smart and quite good looking. And when Brenda and Robert met, they fell in love immediately. They were inseparable. They became super close, super fast. And they wanted to be around each other all the time. So much, in fact, that they actually decided to go to the same college together. Now, just a couple months before the couple were about to graduate, they decided that they would get married. So then they finished school and they decided to move to Oklahoma City together. Roger had gotten a job at a well-known advertising company, and Brenda got a job as a personal banker at the Bank of Oklahoma.
Damn.
Right? So their future's looking good.
Yeah, it's bright for these two.
Mm-hmm. And not long after they had settled in Oklahoma City and gotten their jobs, Brenda became pregnant in 1990. And they eventually had their first child, a little baby girl. It was at that moment that the Andrews family decided that Robert's income was more than enough to live off of. And as a family, they decided that Brenda would be a stay-at-home mom. And they bought a nice, big, beautiful home in a community called Landsbrook. Being a stay-at-home mom, obviously the children are Brenda's first priority. But on top of that, Brenda also participated in many other things. She did carpools with other families, she did bake sales, and she also did a lot of work within her church. This eventually led Brenda to becoming a Sunday school teacher at North Point Baptist. This was a fabulous way for her to get to know more people and be involved with like-minded individuals in the community. One of the other Sunday school teachers' names was James Pavat. He was 47 years old and married. Both him and his wife attended North Point Baptist Church. On top of being a Sunday school teacher, James also was an insurance agent. In 2001, when James and Brenda met, him and his wife were actually in the middle of a divorce. And because Brenda and James had worked so closely together, they were kind of each other's confidant. They would cry on each other's shoulders, and so Brenda became a real good friend of James while he was going through this sad time in his life. Brenda and James would often meet up for coffees and lunch outside of church. They got to know each other and support each other and became really amazing friends. They actually became so close that James and Robert built a friendship as well. Robert would invite James over for dinner and just be there to support him as friends too.
I'm glad that you said that her husband kind of became friends as well, because any woman that's getting that kind of close to another man while she's married, I mean, it's possible, but it's also just like you're walking a fine line, right? Especially if that person is an emotional confidant.
Oh, yeah. It's always kind of the segue to adultery.
Yeah, totally. If Craig had a confidant that was a woman, I'd feel a little uncomfortable with that situation for sure.
Yeah.
But she kind of brings this guy into the loop with her husband, so I think...
And they're all friends.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a little better somehow? No?
Yeah. It totally is.
So they have dinners together. He confides in both of them.
Mm-hmm.
He's going through a hard time.
Yeah, he's just a man that needs some support. So then in October of 2001, Brenda and Robert's marriage actually starts to go awry.
Oh,
and
God.
They separate.
No.
Yes.
After I just said all that shit?
How are you to know?
How was I to know?
So Bev, Robert actually thinks that this is just a temporary separation and that things are going to be back to normal in no time. They just needed a bit of a cooling off period. However, to allow his wife some space or give her some space, he decides to get an apartment close by the family home. He wanted to still be close to his wife and his kids, despite the circumstances.
This is so sad, because if I was a betting woman, which not really, but if I were Becky, I would say that her relationship with James has something to do with their separation.
I think you're onto something, Bev, because James and Brenda, they continued their friendship, but Robert and James did not.
Right. So Robert and James's relationship was truly fueled by Brenda.
Exactly.
Which isn't really a relationship at all.
No, it's kind of fake.
Yeah, it's kind of like they didn't have this real thing that would keep going independently.
Exactly. And so James then starts paying it forward to Brenda. She had helped him so much through his divorce.
Oh.
And now he's helping her, being such a good friend through her separation.
Yikes.
I think most of us can sense where this is going. They start developing a bit more than just a friendly, supportive relationship. It became a romantic.
I was going to say romantical.
Romantical, yes.
But yeah, exactly. And this is why developing those types of friendships or bonds while you're in a marriage is like playing with fire.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you feel more supported by that person than you do your own partner when you're going through a rough time, like it just makes it really easy to say goodbye to your marriage.
Oh, for sure. It creates a total divide.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, I have an easy out.
Exactly. So
I have a support system outside of you, babe. Sorry.
I'm going to look elsewhere. Love you not.
Yeah, so that's kind of sad. I kind of feel for Robert, actually.
Yeah, he thinks they're going to be getting back together.
Yeah, he thinks he's just allowing his wife to sort through some shit.
Mm-hmm.
Little does he know that James is a fucking worm. No, I'm just kidding.
He's worming his way in.
Yeah, he is, to be fair.
Well, the interesting thing is that James and Robert were polar opposites. So Brenda was really attracted to James for that reason.
Something new and fresh.
Yes. And the people around Brenda actually start noticing that she's starting to dress a little differently than she did before.
Huh.
Meaning provocatively.
Oh.
Even at Sunday school, which I think that would be not the place to be dressing a bit more provocatively.
I would tend to agree with that statement, Rebecca.
Yeah, like you are teaching children about the Bible.
They don't need to see them titties.
Yeah. Like, what?
Like
what?
Yeah.
Oh, praise Jesus, children. Here's my cleavage.
It brings life. It sustains you all. I'm sorry. It's kind of gross. But yeah, I mean, breastfeeding's not gross.
No.
But like the concept of that's, at Sunday school, that's weird. But is she doing it to get James's attention?
Yes, Bev. Yes, she's looking good for him.
Geez.
She's like,
this is where we see each other. Boom, boom, boom.
boom-tastic.
I feel boom-tastic with my titties out. Boom-tastic with my titties out. Boom, 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 boom. Hear my titties, hear my titties. Suck 'em titties, suck 'em titties. Boom, 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 boom. Boom-tastic. Boom-tastic. Boom. I'm sorry. Oh my god.
She just couldn't help herself.
I got out of hand there. Excuse myself.
Excuse myself. I'm dirty.
Me and No.
Ew.
Me and Becky were just saying how, like, sometimes in the evening we get a little squirrely. Like, we can't help it. We just get a little wild.
Like, what is that?
I
right?
know. It's like,
does that happen to other people?
in the evening, guys, around
5
p.m.
It's like our witching hour.
Yeah, it's the sister witching hour. 5 o'clock?
Can we stay focused? Nope. Do we outburst in song? Yep.
Yes. Are the songs inappropriate?
Absolutely.
Totally.
And then it gets weird after that.
Yeah, it just gets weird.
Yeah.
So we apologize.
So anyways, Brenda was dressing provocatively to get James's attention. What is kind of sad about this all is Robert still thinks that him and his wife are getting back together in time. But Brenda was thinking the exact opposite. She wanted a divorce. So when she came to Robert with this, he ultimately wanted to give her what she wanted. Like a kind man. He's not going to fight her on anything. And she wanted a divorce, she wanted the house, and she wanted primary custody of the children.
Damn, she just wanted it all.
Yeah, she got greedy somehow. Now, Robert didn't like this. However, he also just didn't want a messy divorce. So he wanted his wife to be happy. Therefore, he would ultimately be happy despite all these nasty conditions.
This is so sad. It just truly seems like it has a good head on his shoulders, you know?
And a good heart.
Yeah, it's like he wants his wife to ultimately be happy, even at the detriment to himself. I would say that's a great quality in a husband. And I don't know, it just feels like bittersweet in this moment that she's leaving him.
Oh, absolutely. So, Bev, we're going to jump about a month ahead to November 20th, 2001. The police get a phone call from a woman, and this woman is Brenda. She's calling because her husband has been shot, and he's laying on the ground, and there's blood everywhere. Oh. She herself has also been shot.
What?
Yes, and she tells the 911 operators that she thinks it was a home invasion, but she's not too sure. All she saw was 2 masked men in the house, and then they were shot. When the police get there, they find Brenda. She's shot in the arm, but her injury is not fatal. Nonetheless, they get her in with the paramedics and take her to the hospital. Then they find her husband Robert laying in a pool of blood on the garage floor. And from initial appearances, it looks like someone had shot him with a shotgun. The injury that the police see on Robert doesn't look like his prognosis is good. Then as the police enter the home, they see the couple's children are actually inside watching TV, and the volume is turned up so loud, it's almost ear-piercing.
What?
Weird, right?
It already feels like a setup almost. It's like
sure
someone
does.
was prepared for gunshots, so they didn't want their children
To hear
hear
anything.
it.
Exactly. That's what I thought as soon as I read that.
Right.
Unfortunately, Robert is pronounced dead at the scene.
Devastating.
And like I said earlier, Brenda is taken to the hospital to check her wounds out. However, they are completely superficial and not even remotely life-threatening. It's pretty minor considering it was a gunshot wound. Now, when police decide to talk to Brenda, she tells them that Rob had come over to get his kids for Thanksgiving, and they were meeting in the garage specifically because there was something funky going on with the furnace, and she asked him if he could take a look at it. When they turned around, 2 masked men came up to them, and one of them shot Robert with a shotgun. And then when Brenda saw that, she attempted to run away. She was trying to get away, and they pulled out another small gun and shot her. She stumbled inside to get away just to make sure her kids were all right. Then she went back out into the garage to check on Rob. When she did, she realized both men were gone, and she attempted to stop Rob's bleeding. She notices his injuries are so grand. So when the investigators get back to the Andrews household, they are obviously assessing the crime scene. They're trying to puzzle it together, and what they notice is that absolutely nothing is stolen. So when Brenda called 911, remember, she said there was a home invasion.
Right. But really, there was just an ambush outside.
Exactly. So
the fact that there's nothing stolen is suspicious a little bit, right?
Exactly. And that leaves detectives to think, was this a random attack or was someone trying to kill Robert?
Well, there are a couple other pieces that you had mentioned when you were kind of explaining her recounting of what happened that made my ears perk up. And the number one is, if you are trying to kill somebody and you use a shotgun, why wouldn't you use the shotgun on this second victim? Why would you all of a sudden pull out a tiny little gun and try and hit them? That is just a little bit weird, right? Especially if you want to be effective. Like, a shotgun seems like a pretty effective means of
killing someone.
Yeah, and just like inflicting the most amount of harm and ensuring that the job is done.
Exactly.
Right?
But also keep in mind, Bev, there were 2 masked men according to Brenda. So one each could be holding a gun.
Yeah, but that's not what she said, Becky. That's not what she said.
It's not what she said, right?
And furthermore, the second thing that made my ears perk up, Rebecca, was that if you were fearing for your life, your husband has just been shot with a fucking shotgun. You yourself have been shot. Why the fuck would you run outside back into the garage, call 911, and wait? Like, I know that you would be tempted to save the life of your husband who just got shot by a shotgun, but like, unless you knew that it was safe to then exit your house and go into the garage where this whole crime just occurred, why the fuck would you run out there? And
also, when you go inside, wouldn't you want to try and get your children hidden and keep them safe instead of just being like, okay, my kids are okay.
Yeah, let's just go back out into harm's TV way. There.
Yeah. It seems bogus, right?
It does. It just doesn't seem like something that somebody who just experienced that would do.
No, I 100% agree. And you know what? That's exactly what the detectives thought too. So they know that they need to speak with friends and family around Robert and Brenda.
Kind of figure out and suss out what the relationship is like.
Yeah, like what's going on. And while talking to friends and family at the church specifically, they find out about Brenda and James's affair. What they also heard was that Brenda had been going around telling people, I assume in confidence, about her affair with James, and that it had been going on well before her separation from Robert.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so she was checked out. There was no hope for Robert and her getting back together.
And now all of a sudden he's dead? And you have a superficial wound in your arm? Brenda.
Don't sound so innocent now. Now, friends of Robert were able to tell investigators that Robert had his suspicions about the affair. And why? Because even though Brenda told these people, and I'm sure it was supposed to be a secret, the rumors flew.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty big rumor, you know? It's not like you're in a church with people who don't really agree with adultery. And I mean, they get wind of it and it's just gonna
stay silent?
Silent?
Swept under the rug? I think not.
I think not.
I think not.
Exactly.
So friends of Robert told detectives that he actually confronted Brenda about these rumors.
Whoa.
But she assured him that there was nothing going on between her and James, and Robert kind of chose to have faith in what she was saying.
God damn it, he seems like a good man.
I know, right? Like, this is like, he's like everyone's dream man.
Yeah, like having faith in her, choosing to believe her.
Giving her space when they separate, giving
just
her
making
what she
sure
wanted.
she's happy through a divorce.
He was a light in this world for sure. So as the investigators continue on in their discoveries, they realize that there is a life insurance policy on Robert for $800,000. So pretty substantial.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And creates a motive.
Bingo. So when they look into the details, they notice that the beneficiary is Brenda Andrews.
Of course it is.
And while they're looking into this insurance policy, the actual insurance company lets them know that about 3 weeks prior to his death, Robert had actually called the insurance company to switch the beneficiary from Brenda to his 2 children. The reason why he was doing that is because he himself had gotten a phone call from the hospital saying that his wife and 2 children had been in a car accident and they were at the hospital. His children were okay, but he needed to go and get them. However, when he goes out to his car, he starts driving and he notices something is buggered on it. He's not really sure what's happening, but on his way to the hospital, he actually goes to the car dealership just to check what's going on. He doesn't want to put his children at any risk when he picks them up, so he thought he'd just take a little extra time.
Well, I do think that's probably for the best, considering his kids were just in a car accident, which I say in quotations because, I don't know, Becky, just seems like it's a setup.
It does seem like a setup, right?
Yeah, it totally does.
What is the coincidence that that would be the case?
Yeah, all of a sudden you have to drive your vehicle, go get your kids, and then all of a sudden something has gone wrong with your car. So anyways, it just seems suspicious, but kudos to Robert for actually going to get it checked out and thinking of his kids first.
Yeah, and just being smart.
Yeah.
Well, Bev, your suspicions are correct because when Robert goes to the dealership, the mechanic tells him, someone cut your brakes.
It's always the fucking brakes.
It's always the brakes. So because of this, Robert cannot drive his car. So he calls the hospital to let Brenda know that he's going to be late because he has to find an alternate way there. However, when he calls the hospital, there's no record of Brenda and her children even being admitted to the hospital. So setup, you are correct.
Definitely.
Robert becomes so suspicious of this circumstance. You know, he is reading between all the lines, and that's when he makes the phone call to his insurance company to change the beneficiaries.
Wow. So whether it's like a conscious thought or subconscious, like he's realizing that maybe his life is at risk.
Mm-hmm. He knows it's at risk.
Yeah.
And he actually tells the insurance company he thinks his wife is trying to kill him.
Fuck.
But he has no proof, right? So
of course, other than a random ass phone call, I wonder if he could get it traced back to who made it. James. Just kidding.
Right?
But like, feels like it.
Yeah. So unfortunately, the insurance company tells him, you can't change it through us. You have to go through whoever the policy was created by, which was
James
Pavat.
No, because he's an insurance agent.
Yes.
Damn. Back when he probably trusted James. Oh my God.
Exactly. So the following...
Oh my God. No.
Bev is losing it. This is terrible.
Becky, I've already thought that James is a part of this whole freaking canoodling. And now he is going to be informed that Robert is trying to change the life insurance policy. And therefore, he can then tell Brenda, who can then be more urgent with her setup to have him murdered. Like, this is like worst case scenario.
It is. Well, Bev, the following day, Robert calls James to switch the names. James gives him this bullshit story and says, oh, no. You can't do that. The policy is under Brenda's name for you. Now, Robert, he is a smart man. Like, you know, in some of these murder cases that we cover, some people are very naive, right?
Totally.
And they trust people and they believe what they're saying, even though it's a crock of shit.
Yeah.
Robert does not fall for that. And he insists that he speak to a manager.
Go, Robert, go. Go, Robert, go.
So the manager gets on the phone and he is able to assist Robert in changing the beneficiaries to his 2 children. Now, the insurance company informs the investigators, though, that almost immediately after that change, there was another change. And that was putting Brenda's name back as the beneficiary.
Oh my God, but who was allowed to do this? Did James just like fuck with the system? Override some shit?
Yes.
God damn it.
That virtually is what happened, kind of. Well, as we know, it was not Rob who did this.
Right.
But the insurance company was able to tell the investigators that it was James and he had forged Robert's signature.
Oh, God, that's fucked up.
Exactly, right? Like, so messed up. So, now again...
Are the children at least still on the beneficiary? No.
Only Brenda. She is the sole beneficiary again.
Fuck.
Yes. So, investigators find that out. And just a few days later, Robert's funeral is held. He had many attendees. However, what stood out to his friends and family and detectives was that Brenda and her 2 children were not there. They were nowhere to be found, in fact.
Wow. That is fucked up. Especially for those kids. Their father's funeral? And Brenda doesn't even allow them to go?
I know, that's brutal. Like, screw you, Brenda.
Yeah, fuck you, Brenda.
Like, do you
that's
even,
a travesty.
Yeah, do you even think of your kids in any of your actions?
No, Becky. No.
She freaking doesn't.
I mean, like, she did turn up the volume on the TV.
Oh, yeah, so kind. They didn't get to hear their dad get murdered? Lucky them.
Yeah, I mean, Brenda so far is seeming like a big old piece of shit, Beck.
Yeah, that she does. So the police tried calling her. They showed up at her house. They even tried mailing her, but there was absolutely no sighting of them. And they assumed that they were now on the run.
I would assume that too.
Yes. And guess who also couldn't be found?
James.
Of course.
Mr. Pavat.
Pavat. Yes. Not found anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
However, on February 28th, 2002, a couple months later, a Border Patrol guard in Hidalgo, Texas, who was just doing a routine check on a family who was coming back from Mexico. Now, this guard almost immediately noticed who the family was. And that's when the FBI was called, came over, and arrested them. They brought them all back to Oklahoma.
Damn, it was the Andrews.
It was. Now, apparently, they had gone on the run to Mexico. However, they were living in scungy motels, and they didn't really have a lot of money. They just wanted to stay low on the radar. But after 3 months in Mexico, they had ran out of money.
And probably were tired of, being on the run and living in less than ideal conditions.
Exactly.
Because they had no money.
That's right. So
they head back to the States.
They come back to the States.
And get busted. By the FBI.
Ooh.
So it's kind of crazy because they go on the run, which indicates guilt.
Yes.
And they probably have their pictures plastered everywhere because they're on the run in suspicion of murder.
Yeah.
And so when they come back, the border control officer obviously recognizes them. So really, they kind of fucked themselves over.
No, they totally did.
Like if they had just stayed in Oklahoma, listen, the case reads guilty. They are not gonna not be found guilty. They made some pretty shitty decisions and pretty obvious attempt at murder. So I feel like they would have been caught anyways, but I think it's just really nice that these evil, disgusting people basically fucked themselves over.
It is nice when they do that at the very least.
Yeah, at the very least, I feel decently good about that, Becky.
Yeah, oh, congratulations, you just fucked yourself.
Wow.
I'm so happy for you.
You thought you were doing yourself a favor, but you fucked yourself.
Here's a bouquet, you idiots. Now, Brenda and James, they're arrested. They have to talk to the police. And when James is confronted with this crime, he says he was only guilty of having an affair with Brenda and that he did help her run. Even when he went to court, he stuck to this story. However, the prosecution wanted to poke some holes in that
story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they actually had a witness, James's daughter. And what she testified in court was that her father had told her at one point Brenda had asked him to help her get rid of her husband.
Oh my God.
Exactly. Like, ugh. So it was known that she was doing this.
And it was known that he was an accomplice to this.
Yeah. It's terrible. And
by
then
his own daughter?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a little bit sad too. Like her having to like
know that about her dad?
Yeah, that's kind of just like twisted, right?
Yeah, I know. I felt really bad for her. But she also then testified that on the day of the shooting, he had taken her car and said that he was surprising her and was going to have some work done on it. So he took the car and had brought it back later that night. But his daughter noticed that there had been no work done on the car, and when she looked inside, there were multiple .22 caliber shell casings in the side runner, and it just so happened to be the same caliber that Brenda was shot with.
Holy crap.
Now the courts found James guilty of first-degree murder, and in the state of Oklahoma, he was sentenced to death. He went through quite the appeal process, where his death sentence was overturned and then reinstated, and eventually he used up all his appeals, and his current execution date is set for July 11th, 2024. So
Whoa.
This year.
Yeah, holy shit.
Now, Brenda was tried separately, and the prosecution argued that she was manipulative, greedy, and that she coerced James into doing this for her.
100%.
Mm-hmm. And she is also being charged with first-degree murder because there is evidence that supports Brenda had shot her husband, Rob, as well.
Holy fuck. Did she have the shotgun? Because I'm like, there was the shell casings that shot Brenda in James's car, but like, what about the shotgun that actually killed Robert?
Well, Bev, they believe that James went in, shot him in the stomach with the shotgun, and it didn't kill him. And at that point, there's blood splatter evidence to show that Brenda grabbed the smaller gun and went and shot him in the neck. And then, on top of that, she went and shot herself in the arm. And the reason why they believe that she shot herself is because that there are burn patterns on her clothes, on her arm, where she was shot, as well as the angle suggested that it was totally possible.
That she was holding the gun herself?
Yeah.
It was so crazy. And like, to really have accuracy to be able to like shoot yourself just superficially, you would also kind of think like having it be on your own self would be probably a little bit easier than someone else kind of shooting you and kind of taking a wild guess as to like where your bones are or like whatever, right?
Yeah, so, to inflict like the least amount of damage.
Yeah, it makes sense that it would be her.
Mm-hmm.
What a diabolical bitch.
Yes. Right? Like I will shoot myself to make it look like I was attacked.
You didn't do the job right, James. I will shoot him myself.
In the neck. I know. And the prosecution also wanted to prove that this was a planned thing, that it wasn't just like a crime of passion. And one of the key things that we already talked about was the TV volume.
Yeah.
Why was it so completely cranked up? Because she didn't want her kids to hear anything.
Exactly. She must have known that this was going to happen.
Well, exactly. That's the only way that you can explain that. So, Bev, what is even more shocking is that, and I think everyone was completely dumbfounded by this, they found out that Brenda had actually taken out a life insurance policy on James for $500,000, and she was the sole beneficiary. It left everyone involved in this case scratching their head. Was she planning to do this to James as well?
Damn. I'm curious to know how she could take an insurance policy out for James with her as the beneficiary.
Most likely fraud.
Like, that would be the only way, right?
Unless James approved that himself, but I find that very weird that that would even be brought up in this case.
If he approved it.
Yeah.
Because it just kind of speaks to her greed.
Yeah,
even more.
She's so freaking greedy. That's like the common theme through this whole thing. She's fucking greedy, man. Now, Bev, within the court proceedings, they also bring in Brenda's neighbors to testify. And the week that Robert had been murdered, they were out of town. And when they got home, they said something just felt really weird in their house. Like they felt a weird vibe. So they decided to take a look around their house just to see if anything was off or missing. And what they found was shotgun casings and .22 caliber casings that were distributed in the attic, as well as a bedroom leading up to the attic. The only other person that had a key to their house was their neighbor, Brenda.
Holy cannoli.
Mm-hmm.
So she used her neighbor's house to hide the evidence?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
And I don't really understand why she did it, except just to hide it, because they were away. So, like, was she trying to blame
Pin
them
it on them?
or something?
Maybe she just thought that
They'll
they
never
wouldn't
find them?
it, and it
And
would
they
just
did.
be the best hiding spot, but they did. And, like, kudos to them for having the weird vibe when they entered their home. Like, they just knew someone was in it.
Yeah,
That's
like,
crazy.
talk about intuition, hey? So, while in prison, James had actually written Brenda's daughter a letter explaining that he was the only one to commit this crime. Her mother had absolutely nothing to do with it, and this was actually passed on to detectives. And so they had enough evidence to disprove that theory.
Good. I wonder if they had phone calls between Brenda and James of her telling him to be like, take the blame.
Yeah, I don't think they had any phone calls. I didn't find anything about it.
It just
However,
seems suspicious. Like, she had her hand in that. No?
well, that's what they assume, is that Brenda had gotten James to write that for her, so that when it came to her trial, that apparently that would be the only source of evidence and they would take that verbatim.
Yeah, or that her daughter would somehow still want to, you know, be in a relationship with her, wouldn't be angry at her or something.
Something, right?
Yeah, fucking creepy and weird.
I know, like, good effort, but you failed on all accords.
Yeah, we see through your bullshit.
Damn, Brenda. So in 2004, after the trial had commenced and they had received that letter, Brenda Andrews was ultimately found guilty of first-degree murder, and she was also sentenced to death. She is currently the only woman sitting on Oklahoma's death row. And on a side note, in Oklahoma, from 1915 to 2022, Oklahoma has only executed 3 women within that time frame, and Brenda would be the 4th. And in 2008, and then again in March of 2023, Brenda tried to appeal her conviction, but was denied. The judge who looked at her appeal ultimately decided that although Brenda didn't think she had a fair trial, he deemed that there was enough evidence to prove her guilt.
Yep.
And that's why her appeal got denied. And that whether she thought her trial was fair or not, it had nothing to do with the outcome.
Yeah, the evidence was substantial.
Exactly. So as of right now, Brenda has no execution date set. So she is just hanging out on death row until that comes. Brenda has absolutely no visitors in jail. Her children won't even go see her. And do I blame them?
Hell no.
I personally would have a really hard time if our mom had our dad killed. I would have a hard time going to look her in the face at prison and have just a normal conversation like, oh, how's your week been?
Yeah.
You know, you got any duties? No.
I would be like, you took away someone that was super important to me, and
I'll never get to see them ever
and not
again.
only that, but I'm sure their life after that was so different. I mean, both of their parents were taken from them, so they either like went into foster care or had a different family member kind of take over caretaker responsibilities. And so, yeah, their life probably took a turn, and maybe not for the better, you know?
Yeah.
Actually, most definitely not for the better.
They don't have their parents.
That alone would be a hard pill to swallow. And yeah, I would definitely blame my mother.
Yes. No relationship. Cut off. I hate you, Mom. Well, Bev, that's the sad case of Robert Andrews and how his terrible wife had him killed.
Damn.
And that's all I got for you. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for sharing.